Hello everybody. Today we're going to talk about, or actually show you how to do a Azure or Microsoft Azure build of a Windows 10 box, and we're going to go through the STIGs, at least one STIG for Windows 10 that I had mentioned last week, how to secure the Windows 10 system. And then how to check the security of the system using a SCAP scanner of some sort. Now there are open methods, open scanners and stuff like that, and I'm going to just download these. I haven't actually used it, so I haven't tested this out myself, so hopefully we don't run into too many issues. But without further ado, let's just get into it. So last week we talked about our security plan, right? And we'd kind of drafted it to figure out, okay, hey, we have 25 users, we kind of have this environment where we have some roving users, we have a headquarters group, and then we have our main lab that has kind of like all the equipment and the main people that are working. And the idea was that our system is somewhat important because if the information gets out, whatever, it's going to be bad, blah blah blah, and so we have to kind of make sure that we do our stuff reasonably right. Now, I didn't make this network perfectly. The idea is that we're going to go through security guidelines to try and show, okay, hey, we would review all of these different things for all of these different devices and for all the layout, and then by doing so we clamp down the network and make it more secure. So we basically came up with some default or some generic equipment that we're going to have in our network. We wrote those down, and then we identified some basic software that would be in this network. Now, not all of this I wrote down in that last video, but I just kind of filled it out and I filled out the basics and then talked to it. You'll find that here I talk about some security assessments that we have to do. So when I talk about doing a security assessment, we're basically talking about locking it down and then assessing how good or bad we did on the lockdown, and then finding out what vulnerabilities are left over, right? So we went to the DoD's public website to find these security guidelines last time, and so we're gonna basically build this like a Windows 10 server, or not server, but a Windows 10 PC, whatever you want to call it, in Azure, and then we're going to open up a STIG, see the type of settings that are in it, and then run a scanner to show how many open findings it would be, and then how we would fix those one by one or with group policy or something like that, and then that would be it. So let's get right into the Azure thing. Just a quick note about Azure. It has, just like AWS, it has 1,000,001 settings. One of these other weeks I'm going to get into Google Cloud as well, because I would like to just have all three of the cloud environments, the big ones, talking to each other in our test environment so that we can kind of practice and really get to know each one of them and see what we're more familiar or comfortable with. I'm most comfortable in AWS, but Azure definitely has some neat features from a coordination perspective. Everything is based off of the Windows domain system, so if you're used to any sort of Windows administration or something like that, obviously this is going to be probably straightforward. When you first log in, you're going to come to something like this, probably. Sometimes it doesn't go to this page, so I don't know exactly what makes them take you to this page or not, but if you go to Portal, you'll get kind of your dashboard of the type of resources that you can access. Over here on the left is where you can really select all types of things, just like in AWS, there's the million of things that you can select. You'll find that if you were creating this as a test network and you had a real network, that you would have to probably create like a resource group and have that resource group associated with a test user and stuff like that, so that test user only has access to that resource group. So you just have to kind of be very cognizant and careful if you're creating these things, because by default, you're going to get global access to everything. And if it is a production network or something like that, obviously you would have to be very particular. So just keep that in mind. I would assume that if you're doing anything production, that you would kind of be cognizant of that. So I'm not going to get too much into that. Virtual machine. So as it states, like, we can create all types of things. We can create just a database. We can create different types of network infrastructure if we really wanted to. I'm not going to go into all the different possibilities. We'll start off with just a virtual machine and call it a day. So in this virtual machine console, we can just simply add virtual machine, and it's going to go to a page that tells us, hey, how do we want to do this? Speaking of the resources and the resource groups, if you had a non-test network, these subscriptions are kind of tied to each what they call tenants. Each tenant is kind of like its own. It's not really an OU, but it's more like a forest. It's more like its own domain, if you will. So like if I have, like, this is Virus Killer, right, incorporated. If I have cyberspec.net as my other main domain, these are going to be separate subscriptions, and it's not quite, and I'm sure there is a way, but I haven't seen it, a way where the subscription is tied to each tenant. So you'd have to, so for, if I have another cyberspec.net subscription, it would be something different, and that means I'm going to get two different charge billed to me. Whereas in AWS, there's like a AWS organizations section that you can kind of link all of your groups under the same billing. I don't know, there might be other ways that you can do that in Azure, so don't quote me on that, but that's how it felt like as I was going through it myself, and I've been working with this before. So anyway, virtual machine name, let's just call this workstation 1, and we'll call this at site 1. And similar to AWS, you can put it in any region you want based on where you're at, or any sort of continuity of infrastructure issues that you want to deal with. Here's the servers that you can choose. Notice that unlike AWS, which has kind of like an infinite amount of images that you can spawn up, this has a very concise list. So if you have a favorite type of server, you're not going to really be able to do that with the default method in Azure. So keep that in mind. So we're going to go with Windows 10. Notice that this Azure Spot instance thing, be careful with this. When you're in AWS, you don't have to be quite as careful. When you spawn up a default instance in AWS, it's kind of default is on demand. So if you cut on a server, you're charged. If you cut off a server, you're not. In Azure, they have slightly different things going on. So I don't know for sure. Maybe they don't charge you this full amount if you start this up and it runs for several hours and you cut it off. But I don't take my chances. I haven't actually run a full instance in Azure, so I'm not 100% sure. So you might have to kind of check that and see what's going on there. But I have run the spot instances, and I know for sure you don't have to worry about that the same way. It's kind of like the AWS on demand. You can just cut them on, cut them off. They're not going to charge you for any sort of crazy fees unless it's actually been running the whole time. So keep that in mind, and also keep in mind if you do use spot instances, they will boot you if you're, depending on the way you're doing it. So if it's a capacity thing, they're going to, if they need the capacity from your system, they're just going to boot you. Whereas if it was a fully allocated one, you wouldn't have to worry about that, of course. There is a way that you can set amounts so that you don't get evicted, and you like add a value and say, oh, okay, well, I'll pay $10 per hour up to, or whatever and that way you don't get booted. I think that that's probably a reasonable way to go. You can just make it like something small, like $1 per hour, and then that way when you do meet capacity, instead of getting booted, they'll just charge you temporarily and then you'll go back. But unless you're really trying to do something more than a test, I wouldn't worry about all of that. All right, username, I'm just gonna call it root admin, and let's just do a regular password here. All right, RDP, confirm I have an eligible Windows 10 license. Oh, I honestly didn't realize that they didn't give you the license, which is interesting. Let's see what happens if I don't say that. Okay, so I can create and add disks if I want to. They give you an operating system and a temporary disk for short-term storage. I can create a new one and just say, okay, well, I want to keep, you know, another 10 gigs or something like that. But because I haven't set up all of the subscription stuff to properly bill for everything, I think that's kind of what it's asking for. I'm not even going to deal with that right now. So I'm not going to waste everybody's time trying to figure out exactly what that's the best way to do that is. But I know that when you do create these, it will give enough space for the OS, and you can kind of do things as you need. So we'll just use that for now. Virtual network. Okay, so if you didn't have a virtual net already created, this is kind of the same as, again, like the VPC construct in AWS, where you get your subnet and you get IPs. You can create as many systems with the IPs that you need for that subnet. So again, there's going to be ways to divide VPCs or divide these virtual nets properly. And I'm not going to go into all of that at this point, but just be aware that as we create a more secure environment, we would potentially say, okay, well, we have this huge subnet. Let's create more divisions within that, so that one group of the network is going to be for users, another group of the network is going to be for servers, another group of the network is going to be like an EDMZ or a DMZ or something like that, right? So just think about that, and just know that that is a possibility there. Well, is it gonna? I don't know if this is gonna create my own public network or not. Let's see how it does that. All right, I don't need any of those special things, so I'm just gonna go ahead and create. What's missing? Resource group. Oh, oops, that's why. Okay. What now? They probably want me to say yes to this thing. Huh. I did not have to do that for Windows Server, which is interesting. So at least I know that I have 365, but that's a strange thing. Why wouldn't they just charge me for the license? So this is part of why I'm not a big fan of the Windows things. There's a lot of weird charging and license things going on. Whereas in AWS, at the very least, when you spin up a server, the vast majority of images that you're spinning up, they put the license cost as part of the hourly cost for your server, so that you don't have to worry about buying separate licenses and making sure that you have stuff like that. So I'm not sure why this didn't do that for their Windows 10 instances or not, but anyway, if somebody knows, please comment, let me know. I'll do more research on this. I am not an Azure expert by any means, so bear with me if there's any sort of weird things that I'm saying. I'm gonna say I don't know if I don't know. So At least don't worry about that. All right, so while that's going, let's just talk about these SCAP scans, because what we're going to do is we're going to download something to run, let's see, Windows SCAP checker. You'll find that, so back to the public DoD site that we were on, I don't think that they have a Windows checker. Yeah, you have to have like a, I want to say you have to be, well, let's see, maybe not. All right, so we talked about the STIGs from here before, right? Like if we go to this document library, and if we want, we can search for our Windows 10 STIG, right? So if we download this Windows 10 STIG, we can view it with a STIG Viewer. Now there's this SCAP protocol, or these STIGs are in a format that is an open format that NIST created. So just like NIST has created all of these other things for us, like this template and everything like that, NIST is providing a whole bunch of other things as well. And biggest, of course, not biggest, but so these STIGs, of course, being an important aspect. So they created this protocol to say, format your security checks like this, and then that way anyone can create viewers and guidance to check this stuff, and everyone can be on the same page instead of having 1,000,001 different things out there to do it. So what we're going to do is, let's first, I actually already downloaded, where is this at? Where's the STIG Viewer at? So I think that's Tools and Guidance. Okay. So if you go to this STIG Tools and Guidance, you can download a STIG Viewer. When you download the STIG Viewer, so if you have Linux, you can use that. Windows, this. I think this is also the Windows. You can basically check what these STIGs have. So I'm going to just open up STIG. I think I had a STIG Viewer. Download STIG Viewer Linux. All right. So here is our STIG Viewer, and what we would do is import our STIG. So I downloaded Windows 10 STIG. I can just do that. Okay, or not. I don't know what's going on there. So it's going to show up here, and you can see Windows 10 STIG. And in here, you're going to see all these different checks, basically, that give details on what in the heck you're supposed to be checking to make sure your system is good. So for example, this one says domain joined systems must use 64-bit, and then it says verify this is 64-bit, whatever. I don't know exactly why that's super important, aside from maybe 32-bit or something or Enterprise Edition has more settings that are available. I don't know why that would be, but maybe Windows does weird stuff. Here's something else. Let's say user must be prevented from changing installation options. So when we stand up this Windows 10 system, there's going to be defaults, things that are set, and there's going to be things that aren't. So we're going to check, for example, this key we can check in group policy, and we'll just check to see, hey, what is actually set? Is this thing set or not? So for example, let's see if this is done yet. Deployment in process. Wow, that's taking really long. That's another thing. Oh, there you go. Yay. Go to resource. All right, so now that we have our VM created, we can go to it the same way that we went to it in anything else. Something that I don't think, why did that not get shown? So I already associated a firewall to this, and I edited it. But you have to be aware that if you, by default, they're allowing 3389, which is the RDP port, and SSH into the default virtual network, which means anyone can go and try and ping your systems and try and hack them and stuff like that, which is strange to me that they would create that by default without warning you. But so I would recommend just making sure that you're checking your firewalls, making sure that it's set to be more strict. So here's our firewall here. Oh shoot. Okay, I take that back. I thought I did this already. Let's just say lock down. Virtual network name. What? That's weird. Can I just find? I want to just pull up my virtual network name. Okay, that's strange. Huh. Okay, so I'm not gonna go there right now because I honestly didn't realize that this was not. Okay. Yeah, I don't want to waste time doing that right now. I'm gonna just shut this down after I'm done. But yeah, be aware that we'll have to create that firewall and then manage the settings so that not anybody in the world can access this. But for now, let's go ahead and RDP into this guy. So if I want to RDP into it in Linux, I can do this. And then I want to say it's user root.adm. I think that'll work. Yes, I trust the cert, password. If you have Windows, obviously, you would just use Windows RDP. All right, so here we go. This is our Windows 10 box that we just created in the cloud. And technically, if this was live, you guys would be able to try and log into it right now because there's no firewall, which, again, I will rectify either in a minute or after this. Let's see. So while that's going, let's also, so what we looked at the STIG Viewer, right? And so we see that there's settings that we need to put in place to make sure that things are secure. And there's a whole bunch of them, right? There's 287 different checks, tons and tons of them. Something also to keep in mind is if you're short on time, you'll see that some of these are more severe than others. Cat 1 is a more severe check than, say, a Cat 2 check, which is less severe than more severe than a Cat 3 check, right? And so when it comes to a priority perspective, of course, knock out the Cat 1s first, knock out the Cat 2s second, knock out the Cat 3s third, right? But doing this all manually, of course, is going to be very difficult. So we want to try and do these things in an automated way. Let's see, online speech recognitions, no, location, no, all this crap. So this, for example, all of this probably is going to be a security setting in here. Actually, let's just do a quick check to see if it is, just for kicks here. Advertise, no. Okay, maybe not. But yeah, so obviously I don't want to send all this stuff all over the place. Personally, I think that wouldn't be as secure, but you know, maybe not. Maybe they don't think so. No. All right, so now we are in our system. We can open up local policy. Let's just do MMC here. And there's a whole bunch of different ways we can do this, but this is the way that I do it. So let's see. Where is I guess I can do that. Okay, so we had that setting up here, right? That said users must be prevented from changing installation options. And it gives you the details of what you need to do here, right? So if you are ever confused about how do you secure this stuff, you literally just go one by one and figure it out, because it gives you instructions. So in here, computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, Windows installer. So computer configuration, administrative templates, Windows components, Windows installer, Windows components, and then Windows installer, and then allow user control over installs to disable. So allow user control over installed. This is not configured. Obviously, practically nothing is configured because this is a default system, right? But we would open that setting up and we would say disable and then apply. Now, if you notice, let's see what this says. Oh, yeah, see, the funny thing is this is actually a default. So if it was not configured, disabled would act the same. So that really wouldn't have mattered. Anyway, not everything is like that. So they like to go ahead and do this. I mean, I think that the documentation would be better if it just if it wasn't configured, at least you would know that it's also good, but hey, whatever. So as you can see, that was changed to disabled. So what we literally would do is go one by one and fix every single one of these items and change the settings in here. Now, because this is the computer world, there's always ways to automate things. So in Windows local policy, you can import into can I do it from here, or do I have to do it from, you know what, I might have to do, so secpol is probably the best. I'm not going to get into all of that because I don't want to make myself look crazy, but there are a bunch of different ways to do this from both local policy to import. We can copy over group policy files in your Windows system directory. And then reload this. You can, when you join it to a domain, which we'll do at some point, this right now is not joined to a domain. So if I do, I swear I'm still not used to this. So if we go here, we can see that, hey, our computer's not part of a domain. It's just work group, blah, blah, blah. We could join this to our domain if we had an AD server, or if we had, if we're in Azure, we could have a potential AD server. That's like a federated thing that just syncs to Azure. Don't know if I'm going to get into that either, but when you do that, then there's group policy settings, of course. Those same settings would then be inherited and able to be configured from the entire forest. And so that would be the idea, is we would configure this one time in group policy and then deploy that policy to all of the Windows 10 systems. That way we do this once. And when we do this, there's actually, I want to say that they give you even template files that you can upload, the ADML or ADMX template files that you can upload. So definitely 1,000,001 ways to do this. Sometimes I remember that sometimes we would have new system administrators who are new just go through and do these by hand, just so that they know where everything is and how you're supposed to do it, because sometimes these things will have other issues, and when you set them, sometimes it's nice to know, okay, well, what is actually being set? Because when you have a fully STIG system, you'll find that things don't work quite the same, and so it'll block you from doing things. Like I opened up this stuff, right? But I'm not I didn't have to do anything to open up an admin access to and change something. So that basically was admin permissions that I used to make that configuration change, but nothing prompted me, nothing had any sort of setting. Well, of course, there's going to be a setting in here that says prompt for credentials, or don't let you do that without some sort of notice, so that you know that, hey, you're going into a admin access of some sort. There's things like this. It's like I can go to the internet right now. Well, if I was an admin with no prompting of anything in a secure environment, that might not be a good idea. Maybe they might want you to only be users. So there's lots of little settings like this that you have in place that you can put in place for the most secure environment possible. So anyway, so that is the basics of how to look at a STIG, how to find it in a Windows 10 system, and then how to change it. Now let's just do a quick, let's check this system. So we didn't, right now we don't know how many settings are bad. And so if I just do Windows SCAP Scan, I think there's I hate Bing, Jesus, I hate Bing. Windows SCAP Scan. Tenable, open SCAP, here we go. So I'm just going to download this to do a scan and see how this works. I have literally never used this, so hopefully this isn't going to be too much of a pain. And I'm going to use the Workbench. Well, I don't know which one I'm going to use. Let's try. We can try both of them, or whichever one's easiest. So let's download this for Windows. Oh, come on. It's already SCAP Workbench, Windows, MSI, cool. All right, let's go ahead and do that. So ideally, if this thing works as expected, this will run. I'll be able to download a benchmark, which is the automated checks for doing these STIGs. And we're looking at just the DoD federal benchmarks, but there are open source benchmarks as well that using this same protocol. So you don't have to use this DoD stuff. It's just if they're securing their stuff and it's open, why not use it, right? Did that download? Did I run? Did that run? Guess that's what's running right now. Let's just give that a second. So let's see, did I have anything else I wanted to do in this today? I don't think so. Hopefully that's not going to take too long. While that's going in, let's go ahead and try this SCAP base deal. Let's see if that one, oh, they don't have a Windows for that. Huh, interesting. Okay. All right, well, let's just give that a moment to run and see what we get. Let's see, while that is going, is there anything else I can, let's keep that up. We'll keep this just in case. What else do we want to talk about? So that's the STIGs. Talked about running it, talked about SCAPs, talking about all of these things. Yeah, I'm just hoping this thing will take a little bit, go a little faster. What else? So Google Cloud is something that I definitely want to get into soon. We won't be going through that this go around, but I'm mentioning it because as you can see, Azure has its own little quirks, and you know, like that standing up at that virtual machine took, I don't know, 5 minutes at least, whereas in AWS was a matter of seconds. It didn't even take a minute, right? And Google Cloud, actually, when I deploy something, it didn't seem to take very long either, but I don't know if it was because of the instance types that I created. So just yeah, it's just all things that I think you should just try out and test as a practitioner. Now, I don't know how many people are going to actually try and use all of the different services like I'm using, but I would really, I really encourage everybody to do that. So that's so that you guys can learn the most from these things. So I might pause it here if this thing doesn't hurry up, because I don't want to go too far out of my script of what I was trying to focus on. So I'll let this king finish and I will be back in a sec. All right, so it finally finished. So we're going to go ahead and run the SCAP workbench and select what to load. Now, I'm hoping this thing will actually work for Windows. I saw somewhere that it said that it might not, so I don't know, we'll see. We're going to load this Windows content. I downloaded the Windows 10 benchmark from that same site, the public.cyber.mil site. And here we have like a little breakdown. Again, I haven't used this before, but it looks very similar to other SCAP tools that I've used. So same deal. Notice that for whatever reason, there's different profiles. If you don't want to run everything, we can disable slow checks. I'm gonna do that because this thing is probably gonna take forever, and I don't want to keep pausing. But ideally, we would just check everything, right? Now, since can't do local machine. Oh no, that sucks. Okay, so most likely this cannot do Windows systems. I'm gonna go ahead and assume that, and it probably won't let it work because I don't have credentials for it, but let's see what happens. Yeah, can't connect. All right, that sucks. All right, so I don't have a scanner for Windows, so I cannot show you that right now. All right, so sorry about that. I will figure out something to use as a scan for Windows for next time. But as you can see, that's kind of the gist of checking your Windows 10 system for security holes, and then at least fixing them manually. As far as automatically checking them, I will have to get back to you guys with a way to do that. That's all I have for now. I appreciate you guys' time. Hopefully that was somewhat informative for those who haven't seen this type of stuff before, and for those who have, yeah, hopefully you guys are bearing with me and just kind of can skip over things if you already know what's going on. So all right, that's all we got for now. Until next time, next week we're going to talk about we're going to hopefully solve this Windows scan issue. Maybe I'll do a Linux scan. I mean, I could probably do that right now if I wanted to, but I think we've spent enough time so far, so at least you guys know what to do as far as starting to secure your stuff. The idea in this whole process of this, in the RMF, we're kind of like this in the step 3, we're implementing things, right? Even though we don't have a perfect security plan where we've identified exactly what we're going to have, you'll find that that's kind of actually like real life. Is you'll have these groups come up with all these ideas of what they want. They think that they've documented everything that they need, and then they start implementing it, and then they realize, oh shoot, we need this, oh shoot, we need that, and that's going to be a never-ending thing. So when you're going to reviews, it's a living document, it's a living process. There's always changes, so you have to make sure that you incorporate those changes, or at least be aware of them, so that you can have a baseline, continue to secure the baseline, continue to assess those areas, but then know that those other changes are also getting put through, and then you have to go back and do those assessments. But you can't just wait on every perfect change, because it's just going to never end sometimes, depending on the type of system and where you're at in the process. Something that's been sustained for a long time, of course, it's not going to be quite as hard, but for something that's brand new, that's going to be a major issue, so just keep that in mind. All right, well, out for now, and let me know if you have any questions. See you next time.